Hey traders, TG Watkins here with simplertrading.com, and today is Thursday, March 24th. We're going to be getting into the markets, and we've kind of been seeing a pretty good up move since, well, basically since price couldn't get lower, since the markets couldn't get lower. That's what I talked about in the preview yesterday, and so we're going to be discussing that. How much further can this thing go, and what might be the path after it pulls back? So I am still expecting to pull back. I've got a few names here and some examples that I can show you of kind of what I'm expecting for both the short and the long side. And then we're just going to have to let things play out and see which way this goes. And then one thing I do want to kind of put out there is watch for how smoothly or how choppy the price action is when we go long or short. That kind of helps tell you if something is happy or unhappy and if it's going to be changing directions. So if you guys have any questions or need more information about me, you can come over to profitpilot.com. And then let's dive into here. So let's see. The thing that I wanted to point out with the S&P, a couple things, of course, is let's get this kind of reconvened like that, is on the daily chart. And right now I have the daily in the middle. And what we can see here is that we do have price over the daily 50 right here. So you can see that we have price over the daily 50, but the Moxie indicator is still below zero. You can see here is the zero line. So automatically what I see when I have this is that this is an inverse trampoline move. We have price trying to go up across a downtrending moving average, and the Moxie indicator is below zero, telling me that this is a false long. So yeah, it can keep moving a little bit. We'll see what's up, but this is not the next new long trade for how I see it. That's why I'm saying there's going to be a pullback. There should be a pullback. That's generally what I'm expecting. But price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below zero. And there is a long way for price to get over zero. So there's going to be some movement around here. And really, the biggest question I have is when price pulls back, is it going to be in support? And are we going to get another little bit of a push up? And that's fine. We can get a push up. But in the bigger picture, we're still bearish. We're still, I think, going to go lower. The question is, do we go higher from the pullback, or do we go lower and start to roll over again from the pullback? And so I'll kind of spell that out as to what I'm looking at, what I'm thinking, as I show you some of the examples and try and draw this stuff out. So from here, I think that we're going to need a pullback. We can see that we have not touched the hourly 50. And at this point, I'm kind of thinking that price is going to fall below the hourly 50. I'm not entirely sure how much, but when I see something like this where the 50 crosses over the 200 after a major downtrend, a lot of times they don't just fall back to the 50 and keep going. They've got to really actually come down here to about the 200 before they go higher. And again, I'll show you some examples of what that looks like. Then the question becomes, if or when price comes down here, and let's say it finds support, and it finds support, can it keep going back up? So about here, can it keep going back up to, who knows, maybe like a double top area, previous high, something to that extent, something to maybe give us a more major head and shoulders, right? Because if we look at the weekly chart, there's a shoulder, there's the head, and where's the other shoulder? We could be basically coming into that. Maybe it'll go a little bit higher. If it goes higher than maybe the third ATR on the daily chart, we're just not quite sure, because it could go from the lower third ATR to the upper third ATR. And at that point, yeah, I'd be kind of expecting things to roll over. So remember, potential head and shoulders on the weekly chart, inverse trampoline move on the daily chart, and definitely extended on the hourly chart. And so I'm looking for a pullback. And the big question is, well, what's going to happen after that pullback? So there is the S&P. And if we look at the NASDAQ, yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's, of course, a little bit weaker, but it's going to be moving in sympathy with the S&P. And the NASDAQ is not as strong, and so it's even worse off. And really, to note, it is significantly below the weekly 50. The weekly 8 is below the 21. I mean, we got a lot of things saying that, yeah, in fact, this is kind of rough. And I just don't really see price going up like that from here. The best case scenario I could see is price coming down, retesting some low area, and then moving up like that. And part of the reason I say that is because right here on the weekly chart is usually where I start to see resistance after this first bounce off the lows. A lot of times, if price is really going to go higher, it's going to have to come back down, retest that low area, and then move higher. So we'll have to kind of take a look at that and see if that happens. But I figure we're going to have a pretty good, pretty healthy, stiff pullback before we can even consider going long. But we're going to have to wait and see how that goes. The other thing to consider is notice that the hourly 200 is still in a downtrend. So it's going to be tough for price to really keep going up here when the 200 is just now starting to turn up or at least flatten out. And that still doesn't even mean that it's really going to be going up. So please keep in your head both scenarios of which way price can go on this stuff. And then if we look at the IWM, yeah, it's definitely the weakest of all the bunch, of course. We know that. But so the question is, how far up is it going to bounce before I think it's going to continue rolling over? Well, in one sense, we could say here, just like the Nasdaq, that the weekly 21 could be somewhat of resistance. The other thing that I was looking at, and this is why I say that the Nasdaq and the S&P could use a pullback, is the IWM has pulled back to the hourly 50. The Nasdaq and the SPY have not yet, and that's why I was thinking that the IWM is probably leading the way. And so the IWM comes down to the hourly 50. It's probably going to go below the hourly 50, especially if the SPY and the Nasdaq go down to the 50, maybe a little bit further. So that's why I'm saying be careful about this. I think that there's still a little bit more pullback into it, even though we had a fairly good day today. But I kind of viewing it as a bit of a bull trap at this point. I think we are in the final stages of this move up, and so even if we look here, it's pretty tough usually to just see price kind of move up from here. After crossing the 50 and then moving up like that. A lot of times that's pretty tough. The daily 50 is still in a downtrend, and so we would kind of need to see that pan out a little bit more, something like that. Or if it does move higher, then come down and then go up if it's going to do something like that. So this is a really, really tough place to be because we are in a transition. It's still not that great out there, but we do have some leaders that are pulling everything up. And I think it's kind of continuing from the short squeeze, basically. I think that since the S&P, the NASDAQ, the indexes basically could not get lower coming into the FOMC last week and into OPEX, well, then all those shorts have to be unwound. And I think we're seeing short covering rallies, basically. And if we look at the Dow, the same thing. It actually looks a whole lot more like the NASDAQ than anything else. But you can see here that it is coming into its hourly 50. And I bet it goes below it. So same thing with the S&P and all that stuff. And just remember, we got a lot of, all of them have the daily 50 below the daily 200. Technically, that's a death cross. But I'm just concerned that this is ultimately a bounce and a downtrend, and we just happen to figure out how far or how long is this bounce going to go. All right, now a couple things I want to show you. Let's go look at Chewy, just as an example, to look back at history and say, okay, what could we be in store for? So if we do this, this is really what I thought was interesting. So we kind of crunch this in a little bit. Let me make sure my cursors are in the correct spot here. So, and actually, let me get the hourly chart in through here because this is important to be able to see how all this kind of ties together and why I'm viewing the market the way I need it to be viewing it. So first, what we're experiencing is, let's just say that we're using Chewy, but let's just say it is the S&P. And the S&P is up here, right? And I say that because price has followed the hourly 50 up like this, and the hourly 50 has crossed over the hourly 200. Same situation as the S&P. And the S&P also has gotten over the daily 50, but the daily 50 is still trending down, and the daily 50 is below the daily 200, very similar to the S&P. And then we can also say right about here that the S&P is below the weekly 50, and the 8 is below the 21, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you guys see the similarities. And the first thing I'm looking at is, look what happened at Chewy. So right from here at the peak of this move up on the hourly chart, what did it do? It came down through the hourly 50 and hit the hourly 200. This is why right now I'm kind of projecting, I'm kind of thinking that the market, the S&P, is going to come back down, drop down fairly hard and hit the hourly 200. At that point, I'm going to get out of my shorts and we're just going to see what happens. We're going to reevaluate. Because what if this actually turns out to be bullish? It comes down here, hits that support. You can see that the hourly 200 is now angled up. You can see it gets back on top of the hourly 50, and then it tests the hourly 50, and then it starts to move up. At that point, it does get really choppy. Like if we kind of show you this, I mean, look how choppy that is. That is my concern that could be happening after the market is chop, 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 chop. Yes, it goes higher, but man, that's going to be tough. And this is what I was saying earlier is look at the character of the market, look at the character of price. And if it's pretty choppy like that, it means it's, even though it is going up, it doesn't really want it to be going up. And what that then means And now as how I was saying also is that right now the S&P is over a downtrending hour daily 50 with the Moxie indicator below zero, just like Chewy. So let's say at some point it does get a little bit higher, 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 like this, and then what does it do? Oh, look, it comes back down and tests the daily 50. Pretty hard. I think that's a fair distance to come down and actually test that moving average. But what happens? All that movement was able to get the Moxie indicator over zero. So, and it turned the 50 up like this. So it actually became strength, it became support. And you can see that price was able to go higher. Now, the concern with all this is that it became a double top or a head and shoulders or something like that. But basically, all this movement here, you can see it on the weekly chart, came up, all that movement up came right into previous resistance here and then rolled over. Essentially, that was a double top. I know the tops are not even, but it came up, retested the high area, found resistance, and then rolled over. And so that is ultimately my concern about the S&P is that if we are able to, over the next however many days, weeks, able to kind of just crawl up like this, ultimately, I think we're going to be running into resistance. We're going to do some sort of head and shoulders situation, and then we could see price rolling over again like that. So I think Chewy actually is a pretty good simulation for what it is that we might be experiencing. Or what we can do is move this over a little bit and show you yet another example of how I think Chewy is kind of similar, depending on where we are with the market. Notice here, we have the daily 50 over the daily, sorry, we have price over the daily 50, but the Moxie indicator is below zero, so inverse trampoline move. And you could say here, same thing, we have price over the hourly 50, but what it do? It eventually comes down here, almost tests the hourly 200, tries to come up. This is going to be an example of how the pullback is actually a weak pullback. So for when I showed you, earlier on Chewy was a pullback into support and it moved up. Here's a pullback that actually just doesn't work. It's actually a weak pullback and it's just going to roll over and keep going lower. So you can see price goes up, 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 finally breaks, pulls back, and then it tries to go up. And this might be where some of us traders, whatever, try to go long. And what happens? It just doesn't work. And what you'll notice is that price can never quite get over or hold the hourly 50. And notice that the Moxie indicator just keeps going down. I mean, look how red that is the entire time. There's one little speck of green, and other than that, red, 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 red. That's what we need to be careful about in watching for the S&P right now to see if this pullback in the S&P is actually going to be strength or weakness. And I showed you two examples right there, one of strength, one of weakness. Now, so we got some other examples. TTD, I wanted to talk about this one. And part of the reason I wanted to show this is just, again, showing you that inverse trampoline setup right here. So we got this. And what you can see is we have price get over the daily 50. Notice that the Moxie indicator is below zero. So that is an inverse trampoline move. Same thing I pointed out that we are currently at with the S&P. And then what you can see kind of leading up to that, we had price following the hourly 50. And then what did it do? It pulled back and dropped below the hourly 50 to the hourly 200, which is the same thing that I was generally projecting for the market. And it was able to bounce up higher, but then it could not hold the 50 and there was some negative divergence and you could see the Moxie indicator just rolled over and price went lower. So this is a couple things. Pullback, test of the 200 below the 50, and then a failed move up, and it just couldn't do it. And I'd say that was because of the inverse trampoline move on the daily time frame. So that's another example of how it may work out to the downside if the market is not strong. How about TW? Here's a situation that we're kind of still in. We're still in this, looking at this, watching and seeing, because we don't have a resolution yet, right? TW, we can't tell if this thing is actually going up or going down yet. But what I can tell you is here, we do have price over the daily 50. The Moxie indicator is still below zero. So that's an inverse trampoline move. And then we can see here that, yeah, price got up over the 50, but look what it did. It pulled all the way back down to the 200. Very similar to what I think might be happening for the S&P. And then it tried moving up again. It's kind of like falling over again and it's not quite doing anything. And we don't quite have enough information to see if this is actually going to hold and move up or if it's going to fall over. So right now I'd be looking at this and just saying it's kind of neutral, kind of choppy. Maybe we could try and say, okay, if it can hold some of these moving averages, then it's bullish. But if it keeps falling down, then it's bearish and you got to get out. All right, then SIG is another one that we actually traded. So we took this one. And let me show you another couple of reasons why I am viewing the market the way I'm viewing it. So in through here, you can see that price got over the 50. Moxie indicator was below zero. And over here, you can see that price got over the 50, was following the 50. It got over the 200, and the 50 and the 200, or the 50 crossed over the 200. And what did it do? It pulled back. So you guys see how right in through here is exactly what I'm seeing on the S&P right now. And that is why I'm concerned. So as much as the S&P might be up here, I'm concerned that it's going to fall down into the hourly 50, maybe fall below the hourly 50, could get to the hourly 200. We'll take off our shorts at that point. And then the question is, what's it going to do after that? There could be some big rallies. Like, look at that, comes all the way back to your potential short entry, and then it rolls over and just can't get anywhere. But notice that the hourly 50 is in a downtrend. Price is trying to push up across a downtrending moving average. So those are some things to pay attention to. And this is why I'm looking at this and saying, oof, we just don't know what's going to happen next. All I can say is I'm fairly ready for this. I think that's going to be happening. And the question mark is what happens after that, kind of like this. Are we going to be bearish or are we going to be bullish? We don't know yet. All right, then let's kind of go into some of the bigger names. So Apple, these are some of the ones that I talked about yesterday. And let me get down here on the lower time frames so that we can talk about this. So if we go over to Apple. Yeah, now Apple, of course, having some huge moves. Fine, great. And we come in here on the hourly chart and same thing. It's really just the same thing that I talked about in relation to the markets and the TTD and the TW and all those things that I was just showing. They're all very similar in the fact that you can see that there is a giant gap between price and the hourly 50. Unsupported, right? At some point, they're going to need to meet. At some point, its price is going to pull back, and price is going to want to see if it can hold the hourly 50, and it may not. It might go right through it. So this is making me extremely nervous. If I were long right now, I would not want to be long. I would be taking off my profits. I'd be saying thank you. And I'd actually maybe looking short because there's most likely going to be a pullback. And what if that pullback goes down to the hourly 200? And yeah, I would just maybe consider selling premium or somehow playing it down to the hourly 200 or something like that. But I've shown you a couple examples to where it seems like that is likely to happen before we can even consider it going up. Like it's got to go down before it can go higher. And so basically, that's really what I'm thinking when it comes to Apple. And we can see Tesla, very, very similar. You can see in through here, very similar. It's actually started to slow down more. So you can see here, it's resting on the 15-minute 50 a little bit more. Now, that's not to say it can't bounce around a little bit, but ultimately, you can see there's still a big gap between price and the hourly 50. I would not be surprised to see price go below the hourly 50 to maybe the hourly 200. We'll have to see how far that thing goes down. So, yeah, I would be very, very cautious on the long side in through here. Another thing we could be looking at, say, gold. I know a lot of people have been asking about this one. Gosh, it's really tough to say where gold is going to go right this moment. It kind of reminds me of what's happening with oil. Oil pulled back hard, but then shot up, and it's like right back to its previous high, and didn't really give me an opportunity to get in. For gold, I'm a little nervous to be going long here, mostly because I like to see price pull back and actually test moving average support. And my indicators, my rules tell me that this is not quite ready to go long yet. We have price over the 50, but notice that the Moxie indicator is still fairly far below zero. So I would want to see some sort of pullback, test of support, and then we move up like that. Because right now, price is only crossing over the 50. I'd love to see it come down into the 50 and then go up like that, and then we could nab it right there. So I don't have it yet. Maybe it'll keep going higher like oil did without me, but I got to stick to my patterns. And right now I'm a little nervous about going long right there. And then CSCO. Oh, this is just another one I wanted to be able to show you guys. Let me see if I can open it up on a bigger time frame. Let's do CSCO. And this is obviously Cisco systems. And so this is kind of representative of what I'm seeing in some of the semis and some of the tech and what you really need to be careful about and why I think that the market is still not super healthy. Now, I know Cisco may not represent everything, but the market is still not healthy. And I think we need to be very, very careful about, thinking everything's fine and dandy. And, that was such a big move to the upside. We're great because a lot of stocks are not great out there. And what we can see is this basically looks like price is flagging sideways into a downtrending daily 50. And it looks to me like it wants to roll over. And there is zero things happening, zero bullishness happening on the hourly chart. It can't hold any moving average, can't do anything, and sure looks to me like it wants to go lower. So, keep that in mind. And as I said, this might be a little bit of an indication of just how unhealthy the market is overall. It's bifurcated. We got crazy names going higher with oil and agriculture and wheat and corn and commodities, but kind of for everything else, it's in a bear market. And Cisco looks like it really wants to roll over from here. So do what you will with that information. I hope you guys had a good time and can actually take some of that. Just so you know, we do I do have a class out there for the short side. So if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about that, we do have it available. Come over to profitpilot.com into services, and then you can check out the short sale class since that is kind of what's going on out here. So thanks again, everyone, and I will talk to you soon.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.